I am a paranormal enthusiast from Denmark, and I apologize beforehand if my broken English ruins the immersion. This was my first semi-paranormal experience, and I assured you that this is OC. I've also posted this on X and Reddit's No Sleep. Some time ago, I had a very long day at my college from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Needless to say, when I got home, I was very tired. I skipped dinner and went straight to bed. Slept straight from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. This is where the weird stuff starts. My parents are usually awake until at least 12 p.m. every day. But the whole house was silent and there was no light at all. Getting out of my bed and checking the ground floor of my house for my parents, then walking up the stairway to check on them, I noticed how most of the doors were closed, which is weird since we have cats. Note, I didn't see or hear any of my cats that day. And they don't like closed doors. Plus, there's always the risk of trapping them somewhere. The living room was empty, but this television was running. So far, the only source of light, except for the ones I had ignited. It was only showing static, and the sound was muted. Okay, I thought, and turned off the television. No big deal, my dad might have forgotten to shut it down. Turning off the television, I went to check my parents' bedroom. My parents weren't making any sound, they weren't snoring, etc., but there was clearly someone underneath the duvet, so I just went downstairs and grabbed some water before heading to bed myself. Now that I think about it, it's astounding how black that night was. There was no light from the stars, and the moon wasn't visible either. The lights that usually light up the water tower visible in the horizon from the window in the kitchen weren't lit either. Plus, the soft flickering yellow light usually cast by the old worn-down street lights down next to my window wasn't in place either. All I can describe that night is simply cold and dark. Going to sleep, thinking nothing of it, I quickly fell asleep, but not to the usual dark, dreamless sleep. I don't usually dream or remember my dreams. The best way to describe my sleep is a series of short dreams, all ending in my demise, or at least scaring the living life out of me. The first dream was rather pleasant. I was in a tropical environment with my classmates and my closer friends, big white sandstone buildings and a huge plaza with fountain ground. It was red stones and very warm, plus there was a lot of palm trees in a square around the fountain, providing cover and also creating shadow for 4 benches around the fountain. I remember how there was sound in my dream, but I focused on exactly what was said or what the sound was faded until there was no sound at all. After I'd taken in the scenery in this dream, and what was weird is that I was aware of me dreaming, or I'd feel like I was sleeping deeply, and also when my sleep was shallow, I was greeted by one of my childhood friends. I remember his reassuring face and our idle chat as we strolled over to one of the benches around the fountain. Another one of my childhood friends was sitting there, and there was also a table in front of the bench. He asked me if I would care for a drink, and I said, yeah, thanks, and I took a cup and watched him pour wine into it. I lifted the cup for a toast, and I was about to drink. The wine rapidly evaporated into thin air. I remember getting angry and tossing the cup down onto the ground. At this point, I don't remember my friends having any faces, and they were just standing there frozen while my eyes were drawn to the sky. I then watched how a crow came as if it was out of nothing. The crow then turned into 2 crows, and the crows turned into 4 crows, and so forth, until there was a massive murder of crows, seemingly hovering in place in the air. What I did next might seem unreasonable, but what I did was close my eyes slowly and then open them up again. As soon as my eyes were fully open, the first crow flew at me, unbelievably fast, with others soon following. I remember narrowly dodging the first crow, but the rest hit me, and then as if my mind was a cheap slide projector, another dream followed. I was in a room bigger than any I had seen in my real life, much bigger than the meeting room in the German Der Reichstag, much taller than anything I had ever seen. When I looked up at the roof, it seemingly just ended in nothing after towering several hundred meters above me. It was a rectangular room, with the 2 longest sides being the one I was on and the other opposite of me. There was no floor. It was also stretched for a few hundred meters, ending in a black, seemingly its bottom, light-sucking abyss. It was as if the darkness reached out from the abyss and clawed its way up the sides of the wall. I was just standing on the platform, one of the widest sides of the room. The platform had a railing, and the railing stopped just in front of me with enough space for a human to pass through casually. If you walked through, you would fall down, though, because the footing of the platform ended just there. There was the same kind of platform and a door opposite of me on the walls of the same height as the platform, and there were a lot of bookshelves made out of polished dark wood. They were spanning the entire circumference of the room. The only way for me to get to the other side would be by climbing on the bookshelves. Mind you, I was only wearing my underwear, the same I was wearing when I went to sleep, actually, and I decided that I wouldn't get anywhere by just standing on this platform, and so I climbed over the railing and started crawling across the polished, smooth surface of the bookshelves. There were no books in the bookshelves, but there was a lot of gray, sealed letters. I don't know why I didn't open any of them. When I reached the bookshelves of the opposite wall, I noticed a small wooden bowl, and in the bowl was a small clay doll with button eyes and a small dress made out of patchwork felt in blue and purple colors. I looked at the door by the platform and noticed a very small keyhole. In my mind at that point in time, it seemed obvious where the key was. So I tore this clay doll apart and found 3 very small rusted keys. 2 of them were broken, but one of them was not, and I was certain that the one left untouched would be the one that fit in the lock. As soon as I gripped after the key, I felt my footing slipped, and I fell back down into the abyss. Yet again, my mind, as if it were a cheap slide projector, simply put another dream on. This is the most terrifying experience of that night. My dream was that I woke up. I was lying on my side in the bed with my eyes closed. No matter how hard I tried, I could not open my eyes. My eyelids were simply too heavy. I even tried opening my eyes with my fingertips, but I could not slide the lids up. I reached for the switch to my bedside, bright halogenous lamp, and flipped it. Instantly I could sense that something was wrong. Even though my eyelids were closed, I could still perceive my room, but it wasn't brightly lit as if the lamp but there was a very soft light coming from behind me, veiling the room in a sort of grayish, twilighty light. The most unsettling thing, though, is from the shadows dancing on the wall opposite of my bed in the direction I was facing. The walls were completely black against the grayish-white wall, jumping up and down. It's kind of silly now, but they would be a complete mirror image of a classic devil horns and a pitchfork, with 3 of them jumping up and down the wall. I felt the cold sweat over my body, and it started shaking. I sort of panicked, and I fumbled, reaching for the switch of my lamp. When I hit it through the shadows, they kept dancing, and with the loudest bang I've heard for a while, a door burst open, and I saw a tall, pitch-black man in a trench coat with my matching huge hat, which shrouded a black face in the already apparent darkness of the hallway outside of my room. Even though I'm Danish, and that also being my main language, I heard the man yell at me, "The crows are hungry!" With this, I woke up, my body covered in sweat, breathing heavily. I was almost afraid when I reached for the switch on my lamp and flipped it on. This time it worked, and I was back in my world of light. I was up for a couple minutes and drank some water, then decided to go back to sleep. At this point, the time was 3:26 a.m. I know this because I checked my phone soon after I woke up. No more nightmares followed, and I first woke up at 11 a.m. later to that day, the front door opening. It was my parents coming home with a couple of bags. I asked them where they'd been. They told me, "Did you fall asleep yesterday? We didn't dare wake you, even though we had plans to visit your brother." Turns out they had slept over at his place because it snowed so much that night. To this day, I wonder who it was beneath my parents' duvets, and I wonder if the crows are still hungry.